Hey guys, welcome to Priceless B Movies. I'm your host Colin Price, and I'm here with the second installment in a series of reviews I'm doing that are of Stephen King adaptations leading up to the September release of the theatrical version of Stephen King's It that I'm incredibly excited about. I reviewed the miniseries It a few weeks ago, and now I'm following suit with the second installment. Thinner. Thinner stars Robert John Burke as an obese lawyer who has just won a big case defending the mafia figure played by Joe Mantegna. And he's out celebrating and he's driving home with his wife when he accidentally runs over an old gypsy woman in the street. Now, normally, this would be a big scandal, right? Like, this would potentially be the end of his career. He could be facing jail time. I mean, the woman runs out in the middle of the street and he's just not looking and he hits her. That's pretty bad. Luckily, being a lawyer and being kind of high up in his ranks as he is, he has two really good friends. One's a judge, and the other's the chief of police. Now, because of this, he gets off scot-free. He doesn't even end up with a mark on his driving record. Man, I wish I could do that. Not like the whole running over people, but like if I did, that I could just get away with it. That would be pretty nice. After Burke gets off, he's approached by another gypsy who turns out to have been the father of this old woman, but he's effectively played by Michael Constantine, and this old gypsy curses Burke. Basically, now Burke is going to continue to lose weight quickly and drastically until he wastes away into nothing, more or less. Now, at first, Burke starts to think that this could be a tapeworm or, God forbid, cancer or some illness that's causing this weight loss. He eventually comes to realize that this old man had not only cursed him, but had also cursed the judge and the chief of police in different ways. So now he realizes these curses are real, and he has to track down this old gypsy and somehow convince him to take the curse off of him, or he's going to kill him. This is a very interesting premise, and it's actually kind of different from the stuff that King normally does. A lot of times, King will write about a writer who's going through some supernatural occurrence, or King will write about kids growing up in a small town. Okay, this story doesn't have a lot of the trappings that King's work usually carries, and it wasn't a surprise to me to find out that King actually wrote the book Thinner under his pseudonym Richard Bachman. I don't know why he did this, but I can only assume that it was because he thought that maybe if he released it under his own name, people wouldn't like it, because it doesn't seem like a King story, really. King himself does show up in the movie. He has a small cameo near the beginning as a pharmacist, and it's always fun to see him in these films. But if the title hadn't been Stephen King's Thinner, and I had just seen this as a normal horror movie, I don't think I ever would have guessed that it was based off of Stephen King work, because, as I said, I don't really think it feels like the kind of thing that he normally does. The cast is pretty good, especially Robert John Burke as the lead, as you get to see him as a man who's really tormented from all this, but also he puts in a hell of a performance, just physically speaking. Burke isn't like a really big guy, he's closer to my body type. He's a relatively thin guy. And for the good portion of the first half of the film, he's under a lot of makeup and a fat suit, and he really does convince you that he's starting off as this bigger guy who's losing weight, rather than a guy who's already thin pretending to be bigger. He just really struck me as being good in this. I think I like him in this movie more than I like him in some of the other things I've seen him in, like that god-awful third RoboCop movie. Ugh. Constantine is also really good as the old gypsy who curses Burke. I haven't seen anything else with Michael Constantine, at least nothing where I realized it was him. Like Burke in this movie, he's also under a whole lot of makeup, so maybe I just didn't recognize him right away. It's possible I've seen him in other things and just didn't realize that that's who I was watching. But he's very creepy here, and I like that with only a few scenes, with very little to do on paper, Constantine's turned kind of a one-dimensional villain into a very relatable character. As the film progresses, and you get a little more of his side of why he felt that putting these curses on people was justifiable. You do start to sympathize with him. I never reached a point where I agreed that cursing people with deaths was a good way to go about proving his point, but I could see where he was coming from. I could sympathize with him and how he feels about people like Burke and about the judge. But Constantine I thought was really good in this. The standout in my mind was Joe Mantegna. Once again, he doesn't have a whole lot to do, at least at first. His role is a bit bigger in the second half of the film. But I love any time where I can watch him play a criminal, because it automatically reminds me of Fat Tony in The Simpsons. You know, like every time he opens his mouth, that's all I hear is Fat Tony. So I love when I get to see him play another criminal, because it just kind of clicks, you know, in that Simpsons fan part of my brain. And you know, I really liked him in this. He has a lot of the best lines, and he's kind of a even the character he plays, as far as the character he plays is, he's one of the more grounded characters in the story. I think he kind of gives it a relatability that the film wouldn't have had if they'd cast, you know, certain other actors in that part. Now, when it comes to aspects of the film that I don't particularly care for, one thing that really bugs me about this movie when I watch it, and I've seen it a handful of times by now, is that the tone is very uneven. I think that if the film had been more of a straight revenge story and been just about Burke going and trying to find this gypsy, and, you know, the urgency of the curse needing to be lifted before it kills him, because I like the race against time kind of elements of this. But, you know, the movie slows down here and there so that it can allow for a subplot where Burke thinks his wife is cheating on him with his doctor. That, honestly, I haven't read the book. I don't know if that's in the book. But whether it is or not, I don't think it was necessary in the film. I think that those scenes slow down the pace. And honestly, you know, the whole thing of, you know, is my wife cheating on me or not, kind of feels like it belongs more in a soap opera than a Stephen King story. At least in the sense where that's one thing going on, and this other thing that's going on is this really inventive gypsy curse revenge film. I think if you just focused on that, you wouldn't need something like a cheating wife subplot to keep it interesting. It doesn't keep it interesting. It actually makes it kind of boring. It makes the second and third act of the film kind of shaky. I don't think that they needed that in there at all. Also, the ending. I'm kind of picky, I guess, when it comes to endings. There have been other films that I've reviewed on this page, like Would You Rather, where I really enjoyed the film up until the end, and I think that the ending just doesn't work. The thing is, at least in my mind, that a good ending or a bad ending will make or break a movie. You could have The Shawshank Redemption, but if it ended with Andy getting shot as soon as he walked out of the prison, it wouldn't be a very good ending. I don't think that Thinner has a good ending. I think the ending of Thinner is ultimately depressing, if anything else, and I don't particularly care for it. There's a point near the end where I think they could have ended it, and it would have been a satisfying conclusion, but then they tack on a little more material for 5 to 10 minutes, and then the movie gets sour real quick. There's some tragic stuff that happens, and I just don't think that it lines up well with kind of the dark comedy feel of the film leading up to that point. Thinner gets 2.5 stars. I think it's an enjoyable movie. It's certainly an inventive movie, and it's fairly entertaining in this dark comedy feel, but I don't think that it works completely. I don't think that it's able to find a good balance between the comedy and horror a lot, which is surprising, because it's directed by Tom Holland, the guy who did Fright Night back in '85, a movie that's considered by many, including myself, to be one of the better horror comedies out there. And, you know, that he couldn't repeat the success of that with this film kind of bugs me. I think that this, in terms of storytelling, was a step down, definitely, for him. And also that ending, like I said. I mean, I think when a movie is entertaining and it's kind of subversive and it's a fun, creepy horror movie, you know, to end it on such a low note, I just don't think that it follows suit very well. I don't think that it works. And, you know, that's just my taste. I don't think that when you watch a film like this, you should, you know, whether you're leaving the theater or you're just turning off your TV when it's over or whatever, that you should feel, like down in yourself. I think you should feel kind of shaken and kind of like, ooh, that was good. That was creepy. I like that. I want to watch that again. I don't like the ending of Thinner, and I do think that it affects the rest of the movie. So that's my review for Thinner. Stay tuned. I got a lot more reviews coming, including some more Stephen King reviews coming soon. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more Priceless B movies.